Hey there YouTube, Paula's here once again. Today I'm going to be making a little tuition video that's for free, and it's basically going to cover all of the basic stuff to do with sweep arpeggios, because I feel like no one has ever done this before, and I've had to amalgamate this information for myself over the last 12 years of playing guitar, and learning all this stuff in fragments has not been helpful, so hopefully this will alleviate some of your guys' concerns about your sweep education. So what are sweep arpeggios? Well, they're arpeggios, it's in the name. What's an arpeggio? It's basically a chord being played one note at a time. So if you were to play an A power chord, it would sound like... But that's obviously quite boring. So sweep arpeggios kind of came in by using basic major and minor chord structure. Now what is that structure? Let's break it down really simply. An A minor chord is made up of a root, third and fifth. Same with an A major chord. The difference being the third, the note which gives the flavor to the chord, can be major or minor. So for an A minor chord you would have an A note, a C note, and an E note. That C note, if it's raised up by half a fret or half a note or half a tone, all of a sudden becomes major. So basically the only difference between major and minor is one fret for us guitar players. And as such, that's where sweep arpeggios come in, because those three notes are very repeatable. Now let me show you what I mean by repeatable. Those three notes are basically starting places for arpeggios that are the same chord. What that means is there are inversions available to us as guitar players, which basically gives us a lot of juice and a lot of extra stuff to do on the guitar. And so the universe opens. So, okay, without getting too convoluted and complicated, an A minor arpeggio, starting in its most primitive form, starting on the root, which is an A on the low E string, starts like this. We have a 5 on the low E, a 7 and a 7 on the A and the D, which you're rolling with your ring finger. Then you've got 5, 5, 5 on the G, B, and high E string, which you're rolling with your first finger. But to make it circular, or to make it fit into a 4/4 bar, you have to add the high 8th fret on the high E string. That's basically your third that you're playing down below. It's a high C. So if you were to play that all in one go, it would sound like this. And that's just the root version of an A minor sweep arpeggio. There's actually two more, because we have two other notes in our chord which we're arpeggiating in the first place. So the third inversion, it's a minor inversion, the third inversion of an A minor sweep starts on the 8th fret, because that's our third note in the chord. So we start on the 8th fret on the low E string, our pinky finger goes to the 12th fret on the A string, then our middle finger hits the 10th fret on the D string, then our first finger travels over from that low 8th fret on the E to the 9th fret on the G string. So far we have this. Then our middle finger strikes the 10th fret on the B string, and then finally we have 8 and 12 on the high E string. Now this is probably the most popular sweep shape ever. I've seen it used everywhere, from Jeff Loomis to stuff from Born of Osiris, all over the place I've seen this sweep shape used. It's very fun to play, it's very satisfying to play once you get it down, and usually that's the first one people learn, and no one knows that it's actually a third inversion of their root. So that's the first two. Now the last A minor arpeggio starts on the 5th. Now what's the 5th of this chord? For those of you who know, it's an E. Now where would an E be located on the low string? 12th fret. Good. So follow along. This one's a little bit more, You're starting on the 12th fret with your first finger. Then your pinky is striking the 15th fret on the A string. Then you have your ring finger rolling from the 14th on the D to the 14th on the G. Then your middle finger strikes the 13th fret on the B string, which is your C, which is your third, right? Keep up. And then your high string, you're hitting 12 and 17, which is kind of a big stretch for some folks. But that's the fifth inversion of an A minor arpeggio. So in total we have very satisfying. Minor has always been satisfying for everyone who plays metal and everyone who likes sweep arpeggios. For those of you who know Jason Becker stuff, you'll know that he has a little song. I badly played Perpetual Burn, but you get the idea. He's actually using inversions. It's very, very satisfying to play, but it's actually very basic. Let's talk about A major now. So like I said earlier on in the video, A major has one difference between A minor, and it's the third note. It's major. And despite the fact that this isn't as fun to play, I don't really like the rolls, it's good to know because you want to learn all 6 sweeps, not 5. So here's the difference. We start in the same way, just as the A minor arpeggio. We're going 5 and 7, 7. But then our middle finger hits the 6th fret on the G string. And then we're rolling 5 and 5 like the minor chord on the B and the E string. But then our high note, instead of being in the 8th fret, has to be the 9th fret because that's our third. Now, I will admit I'm not the best at that, but that's the first version of an A major arpeggio. So, moving on to the third inversion, a major third. Get it? A major third. We're starting on the 9th fret on the low E string. Then our mother finger, no, not our mother finger, our pinky is striking the 12th fret on the A string. Then our ring finger strikes the 11th fret on the D. First finger hits the 9th fret on the G string. Middle finger hits the 10th fret on the B string. And then we're going 9, 12 on the high E string with our first finger and pinky finger. Very fun to play. That one is also one that people learn early on because it's the third inversion of an arpeggio. The original, not very fun to play. I don't use it personally. I don't really have much use for it, but it's good to know what it is, where it is. So now that we've covered the root version and the third inversion, let's go to the fifth inversion of an A major arpeggio. It starts on the 12th fret on the low E string. And then our pinky hits the 16th fret on the A string. I know it's a bit of a stretch this time. Then our middle finger has to do most of the work in this sweep. We're going 14, 14, 14 on the D, G, and B string. Now that is going to require quite a bit of time to get used to. It did for me. And finally we're going 12 and 17 again on the high E string. And that, my friends, is the fifth inversion of an A major arpeggio. So, you have learned 6 sweep shapes, but how do you practice them? Well, one thing that I developed, which I thought was a pretty good idea, was basically practicing the first root version of the arpeggio, going to the 5th and then down to the 3rd. So to show you what that looks like in A minor, it's like this. And I only did that, and I know it was a little bit sloppy, sorry mates, I only do that to have the memory of where they all are, so that I know exactly how far I am from my highest note to my lowest note. And it's kind of just a good fretboard mastery technique that I use. And I do that with the major scale as well. The next thing I actually like to practice is the 3rd inversions together and the 5th inversions together. So starting on the 13th fret, I'm going to play the minor 3rd inversion arpeggio, going into the major 3rd inversion arpeggio. Sounds like this. Now once you get it up to speed, you start to really fly on the fretboard, and that's where I think the comfortability factor of your left hand knowing the shape and your right hand being synchronized really can be put together, because at least you're practicing major and minor, and the shapes are fairly similar but still different enough to give your fingers a little bit of a, to get tangled up basically. So an example of the same exercise done with the fifth inversions looks like this. We're going to start this on the 12th fret. So we're going from major into minor. And that's how it's supposed to sound, folks. I really enjoy doing those sweep exercises like that. It's a lot of fun and it gets your fingers warmed up, and what you need to worry about most with sweep arpeggios is synchronizing yourself up. Now obviously your left hand and your right hand need to obey each other big time, but really it's more like your left hand is the dominatrix, because without the left hand actually fretting the note, the right hand's just gonna, and that's not gonna sound very good. So my advice is to practice very slowly so that you fully get the whole thing under your left hand's fingers, and for your right hand to really just obey the left. You're paying attention to your left. Most guitar players are right-handed folks, and that's fine and all, but in this case your left hand really guides everything. It's been that way forever on the guitar. So pay extra close attention to what you're doing with your left, because it's very easy for your right hand to go nuts. No one can sweep that fast, right? Like, I can't go. So point being, your left hand guides you completely. I hope that you enjoyed this video. It's taken me a long time to do this, and I'm glad that it's finally getting finished. I know that this guitar doesn't have fret markers, but I did list every single sweep as clearly as possible, and I hope that you guys, if you have problems, just rewind the video, go back to it, and practice hard and practice well. And my final point and thing to say is, if you don't practice this with a metronome, you're not going to sound good at all. And that's just a fact. So for those of you who can't play to a metronome yet, focus on that first and work yourself into this. This is an intermediate lesson, not exactly for beginners. And they're really fun to play, but they're complicated for your left hand, and you kind of have to have that confidence. So definitely try this out. Practice as much as you like. I always am an advocate for more practice, and if you want to learn how to actually use these sweeps in your playing, I mean, I do teach guitar lessons, so you can get at me at paulos.com/lessons. You can contact me through there and we can get started on making you a shredhead. But that's all for now, YouTube. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and like if you like this video. Share it to those guitar friends of yours and let them get educated as well. Anyhow, that's all for now. See you soon, YouTube. Cheers.